Welcome everyone to our course on Leviticus and Liturgy. It's my great joy to be a part of the Liturgical Institute here at Mundelein Seminary. We begin with session 1. You received a set of notes entitled Listening to Leviticus, Why the Health of the Church Depends on It. And you'll learn how to follow my approach to outlining. We begin with number 0, introduction, invitation to Leviticus. When we come to Leviticus, we arrive at that part of the marathon where many Bible readers are tempted to drop out of the race or to alter the imagery. Here's where many Bible readers get drowsy and doze off. It was driven home to me a number of years ago by our family doctor, who happened to be a Christian man, and I was discussing with him some issues I was having sleeping. And he said, well, Vern, when you can't sleep at night, just get up and read Leviticus. And I said, Scott, Dr. McPherson, that's one of my favorite books. He said, well, then read Zephaniah, one of those little prophets toward the end of the Old Testament. It reminded me of a conversation I had with an administrator in a graduate school where I was teaching in British Columbia a number of years prior. And there happened to be, just in the way the teaching schedule fell, a three-hour block that was open for me. And so one of the deans came to me and asked, what would you like to teach if given an opportunity to do an elective, anything of choice? And I said, I'd like to teach Leviticus for a semester. And he vetoed the idea because he thought it wouldn't be marketable and would have an impact on the seminary budget. Some years later, I was invited back to that part of British Columbia to do a week-long course between Christmas and New Year, when most of my friends back in the States are watching bowl games and shopping for bargains. The Chinese community of Vancouver, about 240,000 Chinese in the city at that time, had an institute that they had developed. It was connected with one of the universities in British Columbia for credit. And I offered them 3 or 4 courses when they asked me to come and teach, one of them being Psalms, one of my favorite books where I do a lot of teaching, and another being Leviticus, and I don't remember the other 2. And they chose Leviticus, and I thought, not a chance, no one will register for this course. 120 pastors, university students, seminarians, and professionals registered for a week-long study of Leviticus between Christmas and New Year's, about 5 hours a day. Well, it's definitely a more challenging book than many other parts of the Bible, with all sorts of tedious, bewildering, even bizarre-sounding requirements that God laid on ancient Israel, which don't make much sense to many of us today. In the Book of the Torah, Thomas Mann, 1988 publication, captures it this way. Many a pious vow to read straight through the Bible from cover to cover has foundered in the shoals of Leviticus. It is difficult to think of a book in the Bible that is less inviting to 20th century readers. This collection of ritual customs is not only soporific, puts you to sleep, 2 chapters a quarter hour before bedtime, but often seems utterly primitive as well. Consider the ritual in which a living bird, cedar wood, scarlet stuff, and hyssop are dipped in the blood of a slaughtered bird and then sprinkled on a person as a remedy for leprosy. We read about this in chapter 14. Such passages, Mann goes on to say, conjure up the witch's chant in Macbeth, lizard's leg and the howlet's wing for a charm of powerful trouble like a hell broth boil and bubble. He goes on, still I contend that the church desperately needs Leviticus for a healthy and robust faith. Judaism has always thought so, of course. In fact, Leviticus has had more impact on Judaism than any other book of the Old Testament. Traditionally, it was the first book taught to Jewish children, and over half the commentary of the Talmud is concerned with understanding its contents. Many Christians, by contrast, are of the mind that we can as well do without it. That what we need are those scriptures that follow on from Jesus, the New Testament, not those which lead up to Jesus, the Old Testament. Or to put this more sharply, that we can belong to Jesus without regarding his scriptures as ours.